Hello everybody, in this episode of Project E46, today I'm going to be installing polyurethane engine and transmission mounts in my E46 BMW drift car. Alright, so these are a set of polyurethane engine and transmission mounts from Revshift Engineering. I chose Revshift for my E46 because they are a made in USA company that are pretty reputable in the track scene. Additionally, they offer a lifetime warranty on their polyurethane items, so if anything does go wrong with these, send them an email and they can work on replacing them for me. It also is pretty cool that they offer multiple options for urethane hardness, and it does retain the OEM style locking pin mechanism right there. So let's get to installing these guys in the car. Okay, so the E46, like most rear-wheel drive cars, uses two engine mounts, one on the driver's side and one on the passenger side. Also, like most cars, the biggest problem with replacing engine mounts on the E46 is access. So if you look down here on either the passenger side or the driver's side, you can't really even see the engine mounts, so that means that some amount of disassembly is kind of required to even see what you're trying to replace, where you can even replace it. Let me give you a closer look. So, looking over here, this is the passenger side of the engine bay. If you go past the exhaust manifolds down here, the engine mount is down there. And same deal for the driver's side. If you go way underneath the airbox system here, there's an engine mount down there. Obviously not super convenient for access, so we're gonna start taking some stuff out of the engine bay to kind of improve our visibility. Begin by removing the air intake. All you should need is a flathead screwdriver and a 10mm socket and ratchet. Oh, and be careful not to drop the MAF retaining clip like I did. It's small and can be hard to find once it's lost. With the airbox out of the way, we can now see the driver's side engine mount. Let's see if the camera will pick this up. It's completely broken. I can see from up here, the engine mount's completely failed. And it's like beyond dead. Let me see if the camera will pick that up. Okay, can you guys see down there? I'm trying to shine the light on it. Nope. So let's see if I can get a socket on there now. Okay, so my solution here is 1/2-inch ratchet, a lot of extensions, a swivel socket, swivel joint, and a 16mm wrench or socket. Doesn't all fall apart immediately. But yeah, the motor mount is oriented up like this, but the bolt is kind of up and over here, up against the firewall, so a straight socket can't really reach. You need a swivel of some sort to really make that easier. Let's see if I can get this on there. Woo! That was really on there, huh? Nut off. The nut kind of fell on, there's a bracket that bolts on between the engine and the actual engine mount. The nut is actually resting on the bracket right now. Let me grab that nut. I'll be right back. Alright, I have this little grabber tool. It works like this. Like the Claw of Death at your local arcade. Super helpful little tool. Anytime you drop a nut or a socket or anything like that, somewhere that's hard to reach, you can kind of just snake it down there. You can see how deep down in here the actual engine mounts are, way down there. And I'm trying to grab onto that nut. If you're good at the claw game in the arcades, this is a really good tool because you'll be really good at it. They got it. Boom. Let's see if I can get a better light on it. Can you guys see down there? You can see where there's exposed metal from the stud poking out. I know that I removed the nut. That is the engine mount. I know it's way deep in there, kind of tough to see. You'll get a better view in a second. Let's get out of the car. So we are under the E46 now, and rather conveniently, I found the little C-clip for the MAF sensor. I'll put that back on. But now that we're under the car, I can kind of show you what the bottom side access to the engine mounts is like. I have my underbody splash shield taken off. Okay, so we are looking at the bottom part of the engine mount right there. Hopefully you can see that. It's just a rubber mount, it's completely deteriorated. You can see that on the bottom right over there, there's a 16mm nut at the top. I'm gonna try and get the camera on there, kind of tricky to see. It's kind of tucked up and over the suspension. Close, you can kind of see it there, right there. So the engine mount sits right over your control arm, and there's a 16mm nut you have to get off. It's up here. Unfortunately, because the control arm is here, the access is really rough, so I'm gonna try and get my swivel socket up there and see if I can break that off. Okay, with the right combination of a swivel joint and a small 3/8 16mm socket, I was able to get a hold of the motor mount. We'll see if I can actually get enough torque on this thing to actually break it loose with the swivel socket. I'm never quite sure. Oh, thank God. Okay, we broke it loose. I put a jack under the oil pan. And let's see if we can take this out. That's really annoying. Off. Okay, so this engine mount nut is off, so the engine mount, all I should have to do is jack the engine up and take it out, hopefully. With the jack under the oil pan, I can't actually see what I'm doing, I'm just going by feel. I think it's, oh, it's close. So the engine needs to go a little bit higher and I can get this mount out. That was a few really delicate pumps on the jack. Hopefully that's enough to get this thing out. Oh, yes, okay. Motor mount number 1, out. Let's take a look. This is the engine mount for the E46. It's supposed to be one piece. That's a key thing for you. But you can see the mount has completely, it's like lopsided, and the rubber is like completely destroyed. Like, I mean, it came apart in 2 pieces, for God's sake. So let's put the new Revshift driver's side mount back in the car. Okay, so I apologize for the rough camera angle. This is something that's pretty tough to film without the car being on a lift. But this is the new Revshift mount. I'm looking up at the front subframe where this rests. There is a stud with the nut bolts onto it. You can see there's also a little tab here. So we have to line this tab up with the front subframe. That's how you know the motor mount is sitting properly. So we're gonna snake this up here. And oh, I see. So this subframe is drilled out for multiple configurations. It goes like this, doesn't it? If I can get that in there. Come on. All right. It's in. So the new Revshift mount, unlike the collapsed stock mount, is actually a little bit taller because it's not collapsed. The motor has to go up a little bit higher. Alright. Okay, so I think I have the mount in place like that. Now I need to go up and watch the bracket on the engine as I lower it down, make sure it lines up with the bolt hole here. And I'm going to put this nut on, at least loosely, kind of hold this mount in place. So the mount is installed. The alignment dowel faces the front of the engine bay, at least on my 328i, just for your reference. I think this second hole is for all-wheel drive, maybe. I'm not sure on that. But the mount's installed. Let's go and lower the engine down. Okay, so I'm topside looking down. So I need to lower the engine about an inch to kind of get the line up with the Revshift engine mount. So now it's a fun game of lower the engine down slowly and hopefully don't break everything. It's a fun one. Well, we're close. It actually worked. So if you're having this problem, you're trying to kind of align the engine mount to the engine. Literally grab the top of the engine, like the valve cover or the intake manifold, and just jiggle it as you lower it down slowly, and that seems to kind of be working for me. So again, sorry for the bad angle. This is a pretty tough one to see. Hopefully you can see. I've lowered down the engine onto the engine mount. You can see the threads sticking up right there. So I need to get a nut on there, tighten that down, and then this side is done. So this has become a new fun way, like when you have a really delicate bolt or nut you don't want to drop and you need to go far in the engine bay, is to use my little claw of death and get it started. And then get down there with a wrench and really tighten it once it's like sitting on the threads. And you know it's not just gonna fall off. All right, all we need to do is tighten down both sides and we're good. That seems pretty tight. All right, go to the bottom, do the same thing, then we're done. We need the passenger side engine mount now, and it's kind of the same deal, where if you look down here, get the light just right, you can see the engine mount with a big 16mm bolt right there. And I can already see that, like the other one, although there's a small heat shield on top of it, that this motor mount's completely destroyed. I'm not sure if you can see the bushing completely torn, but I can. All right, so let me grab my bunch of extensions, my swivel socket, and we'll get that 16mm nut off. About a foot's worth of extension, a swivel socket attached to a 16mm, and we're just gonna reach down there and see what we can do. Ooh, for this side, we're actually gonna need more extension. We're gonna need about maybe 6 inches more extension than this, about 2.5 feet maybe. Whew. Okay, the camera's not recording for that, sorry, but this passenger side, the top nut was on there so tight, I had to use a 2-foot breaker bar and then put my entire body weight on it to get it off for some reason. That's obviously not supposed to be like that, but I guess from being heat cycled on there for years, that's just how it is. Yep, the top nut just fell into the oblivion. Hopefully I can find that. Okay, so sorry about the funky camera angles again. At least when you're working on it, this passenger side mount's a little bit easier to see. It's right here under the stock exhaust manifolds, or your headers, I guess, however you want to call it. It looks like access is going to be the same deal. The control arm is in the way, and we need to get that nut off. So I'm going to try and snake this socket on a swivel in there and see if we can get that to come off. Yep, like that. All right. That's gonna stay in place, hopefully. And then hopefully this is gonna come off a little bit easier than the one up top, which had to be breaker barred. Okay, got this lined up. Ah, man, not a good way to get leverage. Man, this is really on there, huh? Ugh! Okay, so the engine needs to go up about 1/4 of an inch higher, give or take. Passenger side engine mount also out, also broken in half. Nice. All right, back with the Revshift mount, and same process as the other side basically. The only difference is this side has a heat shield for the catalytic converters. We're gonna stick the engine mount up there and mind the detent on the engine mount, make sure it lines up into the chassis. Okay, so I got the little detent pin lined up. Again, the detent pin is near the front of the engine bay. I'm actually gonna put a bit of Loctite on here. I'll be right back. So all that's left is trying to get this heat shield up and over the stud. That. Okay, now I have the bottom nut loosely kind of holding the mount in place. I have the heat shield on top of the mount. Now I need to go up top and lower the engine down and hopefully get that nice and lined up. Okay, so everything is lined up. Now I need to get the nut on top of the mount there. If you have magnetic sockets, this is where they come in handy. Woo! Alright, I use my little claw of death tool. I use my claw of death to get the nut started on top of the engine mount. Instead of not at an angle, it's hard to just drop it on there and go. Now I can get all my sockets and my extensions and just tighten it down, hopefully. Alright, top one's done. Let's tighten up the bottom nut, then we're done. What's up, guys? I moved the E46 out here so I can get more room to work. When you last saw, I'd finished the engine mounts. I was going to start on the transmission mounts, but I forgot a crucial step when installing the Revshift engine mounts on an E46. Let me show you really quick. So I ended up removing the front wheel, which made access a lot easier. So here is the driver's side engine mount, much easier with the wheel removed to kind of see. So the studs that go through the Revshift engine mount are actually removable. Which makes installation a little bit easier. But the thing is, because these studs are not permanently pressed in and are removable, you can put Loctite on these studs. That way, when the stud goes into the engine mount here, it doesn't back out from all the vibration. So, fortunately, I was able to put a 5mm hex key right here, back this bottom stud out, put some Loctite on there and send it up, as well as put a bit of Loctite here on this bottom nut. The top one's less of a concern just because of where it's situated. It's not going to back out and fall out like this one would. But it's just something to keep in mind when you're doing the Revshift engine mount install, is that these studs are removable and need to be Loctited before you actually install them in the car. So I'm going to do the other side, and then we'll get over to the transmission mounts. Okay, so hopefully the light is not blinding you, but the next step is the trans mounts. Here is the transmission, your drive shaft, and here are the two mounts right here. Hopefully I have the camera placed correctly. The mounts sit on this little brace. It's bolted to the chassis. It looks like it's all 13mm fasteners. So in the interest of full disclosure, the factory exhaust right there does partially obscure this bracket. The correct way to do this is to drop the whole exhaust, but I'm feeling pretty lazy, so I'm going to see if I can work around this slight impediment. So let's get to it. Okay, so we got 4 13mm fasteners on this brace right here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I can just get my socket past the exhaust onto that one. Now, depending on your car and what's going on, you may have to put a jack under here to support the transmission. But I think the engine and new engine mounts and the drive shaft should hold the trans up enough for me to work here. Well, let's find out. If you recall, if you're a long time watcher, you remember that I actually did replace these mounts with new M3 style OEM ones. They're just a little bit stiffer than the standard E46 mounts. And those are fine, so they're not broken, but it's just, at this point, I want to go more hardcore. If anyone wants these M3 mounts, I'll sell them to you for like $5. Just come pick them up. Is the transmission gonna come down and smack me in the face? Well, we're gonna find out. The brace is hanging, but it's still mounted to the transmission mounts themselves. The transmission mounts have little nuts in here and in here. They are also 13 mils. Oh no, my 13 mil is rolling away. No! Oh well. Alright, now this should pop off. It's not stuck on the threads. the transmission mount like that. Ah, there we go. All right, the brace is off. And there are our two transmission mounts. There's a 13mm nut up here, and they will come off. Let me grab my socket that's rolled away. Oh, hello there. I'm back. And I have a 13mm wrench, because I don't think I can get a socket up there with the flex disc in the way. Puh. And a bug just flew in my mouth. Lord, where's my hammer? Oh, hello there. I'm back. And I've got a 13mm straight wrench and a mallet. So let's see if I can use some persuasion and get these to come off. There we go. Now we're going to use the persuader, which does an admirable job of persuading. Am I doing this wrong? I think I'm doing this wrong. Am I doing this wrong? Oh yeah, I was doing that wrong. That'll impact your results if you're tightening instead of loosening. But that one's off. The tabs on the transmission are slotted, so all you have to do is kind of just loosen the nut. You don't have to remove it, just loosen it and pull it back. And now that I know my left from my right, because I'm a complete moron, that should make this a little bit easier. And that is mount number 2 off. Oh hey, I'm back, and I have some polyurethane transmission mounts. Now it's worth noting that these mounts are not left to right directional, but they are up and down directional. I don't know if you can see that there's a detent in the polyurethane. That needs to be facing down because the transmission brace has a little uptick right here to kind of locate the mounts. So that's worth noting. If you have your transmission mounts, you see that little relief cut into them, those face down. Is it easier for me to put these up like that? Yes. So it's going to be easier to keep these located on the transmission brace if I bolt them to the brace first and lift them up and then tighten up the top nut. At least I believe so. Okay, let's give my theory a shot. So we're going to put the transmission mount on the brace, line up a little detent, and then at least get these started. Alright, that's roughly mocked into place. Let me grab the other one, do the same thing. Again, I apologize for the lighting. Hopefully it's not brutal for you. Kind of brutal for me. I can't see that much, but hey, it's okay. Alright, let's take our second transmission mount. Alright, have these mocked into place. Transmission mounts on the brace. Now we're going to try and lift this up and see if I can get this to go. Oh no, I've made a mistake. Let's go like this. Yes. Okay. So keep in mind that the brace is directional to clear the exhaust, it looks like. So the studs and the chassis are offset. So make sure that your brace is facing the right direction. It kind of only goes one way. At least on my car, this little dowel facing down. That's on the driver's side. So I'm gonna start bolting the brace up back into the chassis. If I can find my 13mm socket that rolled away. Something, crisscross applesauce, I don't know, kind of do, whatever. I like how I do all these installs at night, because that just makes it much easier, you know, when you can't see anything. Alright, so the trans mounts are kind of roughly bolted up in place. Now I need to get the top nuts that go on the transmission tail end of the transmission mounts. I need to get those threaded. And the only problem with doing it this way is I have to kind of rely on magic. Now, I'm not sure if you can tell, but the access, you know, you can't really see what you're doing because it's on top. But as far as like getting a hand up there and getting a wrench up there, they're obviously much tougher jobs. I haven't timed myself doing this, but you know, I don't think it's that bad. In fact, the hardest part about this job, at least for me, is that my car leaks so much, I am covered in gunk. I'm invoking the power of Chalice DeNofa, who's on my computer right now drifting. Alright, why won't you thread? Okay, it goes like that. Now, installations are a bit tough for me, because whenever I get under a car, I seem to have dyslexia and I can't tell my left from my right. And this is no exception. Is there a torque spec for these bolts? Absolutely. But is there any way you can go torque wrench up there? Absolutely not. So, tight. Okay, so the upper bolts are done. We're gonna do the lower ones here with, thankfully, our socket and ratchet. And then we are done, ladies and gentlemen. And that's good. All right, all I do is finish up the brace. All right, and then this last one, which was really loose. All right, trans mounts are installed. Let's put the wheels back on this thing and lower it down. Good morning, everyone. As you can see, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and the ongoing sounds of the industrial area construction behind my neighborhood continues. But that's okay, that's not what we're here to talk about. Obviously, if you recall, last night I finished up installing the Revshift engine and transmission mounts in the E46. The camera cut out after that because the battery died. That's my bad, but all you really missed is me putting the tires back on the car and dropping it back down. All I did was drop it down to the end of the block here and park it. Obviously, it's the next day, so let's go for a drive and see how the car feels with the new Revshift mounts. Okay, fingers crossed, right? So I'm not sure if the camera can pick that up, but on startup, it's a more connected feeling. Obviously, you're gonna get a little bit more vibration from the fresh new engine mounts. But despite the bushings being a 95A durometer poly for both trans and the engine mount, it's actually not bad. There's like, you can hear the engine rumbling a little bit. If you listen really close, you can hear the engine rumbling. But there's not much in the way of shakes or vibrations or anything like that. You know, on some cars, it's the steering wheel shake or the dash shake or anything like that. That's not really the case. I think part of that is just due to the way that BMW lays out their drivetrain and the way their mount system's kind of done. It's pretty smart as far as the NVH side of things is concerned. But thus far, everything seems good. Obviously, the stock mounts that were in the car, I'm guessing they were original from 1999. Fun fact, this car is actually a super early build date. Everything's stamped on in 1998, so they could be over 20 years old. And obviously they came out broken in half, which is not great. There's a little bit of vibration right there as the engine's trying to settle into its final warm idle. There you go, a little vibration, but not bad at all. All right, so let's go for a drive. Hear a little bit of vibration there. Ooh, the shifter feels tighter right away, even just kind of sitting here, which is a nice improvement. So I'm not sure, oh, okay, that's noticeable too. I'm not sure if you guys can pick that up, but obviously with the welded differential and every bushing in the rear end being really stiff, you know, poly subframe, poly diff bushings, hardened trailing arm bushings with Delrin limiters, and obviously the welded diff itself. There's going to be a lot of NVH back there, and before, that sort of low speed turning hoppy with the welded diff was really bad. It actually seems much better now. My guess is that with the broken engine mounts and pretty soft transmission mounts, the welded diff and all those solid bushings back there basically overpowered. We're twisting and torquing the drivetrain quite a lot, causing more of a vibration to hop at low speed. It does seem much better. Little takeoff there. As you can hear, there's some vibrations, but honestly, not that bad. You can definitely hear more engine vibrations through the chassis. I'm not sure that's coming through on the camera. Sort of a general vibration-y sound you get with any sort of aftermarket motor mount, but actually it's probably the most comfy aftermarket mount system I've ever experienced in any car. I've done aftermarket mounts on a lot of different cars over the years, and this does seem to be the comfiest of the bunch, at least thus far. You hear that little vibration now. Not bad though. There we go, now there's a little bit of vibration. It seems like once the engine lowers down to its final idle, about 700 RPM, we're getting some vibrations down here, but it's not that bad. I also have the AC on, which does increase vibrations with aftermarket mounts for some reason. Yeah, you see I turned the AC up and the vibration got a little bit more intense right there. But I'm going to try and blip the throttle and see if that goes away. Yeah, right there. So there's just sort of a sort of harmonics issue. I'm guessing right around 700 RPM with the stiff engine mounts, but honestly, not bad at all. If it really bothers you, bump the idle up, I guess, if you care. But it seems totally fine to me. Once we get a green light here, I'd like to do some takeoff and actual driving. I'll cut the camera for a sec. Okay, on the road again. Yeah, much less low speed hopping around corners with low diff, which is a nice improvement. It was pretty bad before. There's definitely additional harmonics coming through the chassis from the engine and trans, which is kind of to be expected, but not bad thus far. Oh, God. Yeah, once the engine settles down to about a 700 RPM idle, you get that vibration right there, which, in my experience, has been pretty normal with every car with aftermarket engine mounts. I guess something you kind of live with. Doesn't seem that bad to me. I'm guessing, like all polyurethane mounts, these will kind of break in over time and get softer. A little bit of a buzz right there on takeoff. So on throttle, you definitely get more of a buzzy sensation. The engine's now completely hooked up to the front frame rails, whereas before it was kind of just hanging out by magic. When you lift off the accelerator to shift or just engine brake, you definitely get more gear whine, which to me is a positive. I think it sounds cool. Interestingly, side effect I was not expecting, the steering now feels much tighter. Now, I have a suspicion as to why the steering now feels much tighter with new engine mounts versus ones that are broken in half. And hear me out, because this might sound crazy, but here's my thought. So the engine sits between your front strut, your front strut towers and your front frame rails. And to me, I'm looking at the engine as a big 500-pound chassis brace. So if you have busted engine mounts, obviously it's not going to tie together the two sides of the car up front. Well, with really stiff engine mounts, it basically makes the engine a structural member of the front of the car. And that, to me, would explain why the steering now feels much tighter on this car. A little bit grumbly and rumbly below 2,000 RPM when cruising in fifth, but doesn't seem that bad to me. Alright, so we are cruising at freeway speeds, and there's maybe a little bit more noise, but not really, which is quite nice actually. You know, it doesn't seem like there's that much of a trade-off with these Revshift mounts for your street and drift car. vibration there of some sort. But overall, not bad. Okay, so let's wrap things up while I'm sitting here in traffic. I've put a few more miles in the Revshift mounts, and for a fun street car and your street drifter, your street and track car, these 95A Revshift mounts seem like a kind of a no-brainer upgrade. It tightened up the steering, the shifter feels better, the engine feels a heck of a lot better now it's actually connected to the front frame rails there. Yeah, nothing bad to say about the Revshift mounts. Go check them out. They're actually pretty reasonably priced, too. So, that's my install and review of the Revshift engine and transmission mounts for the E46. Hopefully you found this video useful or maybe slightly entertaining. I doubt the entertaining, but kind of a dry one this time around. That's okay. Oh, it sounds cooler with the new mounts. It definitely sounds cooler on throttle with the new mounts. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe, or don't. It's your call. Alright, until next time, peace out. Thank you for watching another episode of Project E46. Hopefully I can keep doing fun stuff like this in the future.